Okay, so back to this wire and framing assignments that we have here. Assignment number 1, you can see what the lessons are and the design exercise for us to do. So let's go ahead and get started on that. We click on this last link here, Learn Design with Figma. And this is the course that we're going to do. So we'll click on Getting Started. Hello and welcome. So if you ever wanted to pursue a career in design, I know some of you guys are designers, like you're more designer inclined than I am, which is great. So you might really, enjoy this course. And if you're not design inclined like I am, then this could help you figure out how to do it. So, regardless of why you want to learn design, at Figma, we want to make it easy as possible for you. So we built a Learn Design program. It doesn't exist just to help you learn how to use the tools that they've created, but to learn the fundamentals of design and concepts behind the largest digital products that exist today. So you may want to use design to explain, to tell a story, to plan, to problem solve, or make something look nice. These are all goals that you can achieve through designing. Often people think design is about the way things look, but it's not just that. That's one element of design, and there's more to it. It's more of a problem-solving tool. A visual design is like a billboard, app, screen, Facebook ad, or icon, are compositions of basic shapes to make something greater. So it talks about the music app, Apple Music app. And I'm not reading this verbatim. You guys all know how to read. I'm just kind of going through this in case you haven't figured it out yet and doing my own ad lib on some stuff. In a series of shapes, images, and text organized in a composition, the designers that created this arranged these items with a few goals in mind. There are always the business goals of a product, such as get customers to add more music to their playlists. But the designers also focus on readability and how easy it is for people to understand what they're doing. The plus symbol is pretty intuitive. You're going to add something. The play symbol, the next song symbol, those things are pretty intuitive, so people know what it is to expect. Let's see. We can look at a lot more goals. So in one of the previous lessons, they talked about how they just kind of did the layout on a grayscale. Just the basic layout, not worrying about the details, but just trying to get the basics down. And below is the file of the Apple Music screen from above with a collection of its objects in the wireframe. So we can click the Open Activity in Figma link to get a copy of the file. If this is your first time using Figma, you can create an account. So everybody's going to need to create an account eventually. We don't need to do this right now. This is kind of just an introduction. And I know there's a lot of assignments on this particular a subject matter, so we don't need to do that one. I don't think so anyways. At this point, hopefully you have a better sense of how apps on phones can be constructed with the basic building blocks of lines, rectangles, circles, and so on and so forth. So you can look at the apps on your phone, and it's hopefully intuitive. If it's an app that you still have on your phone, it's probably because you like it or you need it, one or the other. But either it's because you want to have it or you have to have it. It's pretty intuitive, hopefully. The same is true for the web or billboards, magazines, books. They are most likely made up of basic shapes arranged together to achieve goals and to look visually pleasing. As you learn to design, you will learn how to arrange different objects and layouts and interfaces to achieve your goals. So that's how understand why and how to achieve the goals of your company or client. So why is design important? Companies that succeed at disrupting age-old industries often offer a better experience. Often while solving the same problems. A simple example, Uber and Lyft versus taxi cabs. Both of these services provide similar kind of service, but taxis need to be flagged down or called through a dispatch service, whereas Uber and Lyft, you get an app for that. As the physical world goes into digital, smartphones is in the hands of billions. Companies have an imperative to innovate and are now competing on the power of their customer experience. Design's role has moved from a nice to have to a must have to be a differentiator. As a result, designers have more influence, but there's not enough designers to meet demand. So this might be especially interesting for those who are design inclined, to like design. So in 2012, I don't know what that symbol is. So we're going to go Dropbox. No, that's box. Either Dropbox or box. I don't remember which one that is. In 2013, it was 1 to 10 ratio, one designer for every 10 developers, and now the ratio is one designer for every 6 developers. Not sure what that symbol is. LinkedIn, we all know LinkedIn. Hopefully love LinkedIn. In 2010, it was one designer for every 11 developers, and now it's one designer for every 8 developers. So there's more increased in a demand and designers in comparison to the number of developers. And look at IBM, it's like one for every 72, and now it's one for every 8. That's a big jump. So what is this design course? This course is an entry into digital design, both in concept and practice. We believe everyone can learn how to design, and access to design education be free and readily available. The more people who can design and build things they imagine, the better this world will be. But there are barriers to become a designer. There's costs, obviously, software, computers, school, those are all kinds of barriers. So Figma has built this free tool and course to learn better digital design. This course is focused on digital design, the creation of apps, websites, and digital image. What was that? Regardless, the same fundamentals, the concepts and technical skills that you will learn to apply to many forms of design. So there's a grid system built for web, for example, can be translated into print design and vice versa. In this course, you'll go through each step of designing and creating a digital product, from identifying your audience for the product, doing research, considering ethics, accessibility, and so on and so forth. It is self-paced, but I do have assignments. However, we recommend you don't try to fit it into one weekend, which you guys give me feedback. If you think it's just too much, remember, this is a 16-week course compressed to 8. This is the first time I've assigned these courses in this format. If you think it's too much, you have to give me feedback, but you can't just be, it's too hard. You got to give me some more constructive feedback if this is too much, and I need to break it up into 2 separate weeks. I need you to give me that feedback, but don't forget, this is a 16-week course pressed into 8, and that's where I struggle to find the balance, to be too little or too much. But if you think this is too much for one particular week, let me know. What you'll need for this course, we just need the internet, which hopefully I think everybody has to some degree. What this course looks like, has lessons, design exercises, further reading, there's a community, there's a playbook, and that's it. So this is the first reading assignment for this particular lesson. So let's go into graphic design. I'm gonna hit back. What is graphic design? So graphic design is not just aesthetics. It's everything that comes with design. Design is all around us. It impacts the way objects and environments function. It's something that is executed by everyone. Every choice you make to solve problems is a design decision. The way you get ready, brushing your hair, having a coffee, and so on and so forth, is a design decision. And it's kind of like a creature of habit. My husband works second shift, and my son and myself are usually not home. When he's getting ready for work, and he gets frustrated whenever we're home because we mess up his routine. He likes his routine. He has a reason for his design on how he gets ready for work, and we mess it up whenever we're home. But anyways, so this might have developed out of the way toothpaste was making your coffee taste and the coffee stain in your teeth. You solve these problems at some point, and that kind of goes into design as problem solving. So it talks about signage on a door. You want it to be fairly, hopefully, um, self descriptive or self whatever, I can't think of it, self explanatory in regards to signage on a door, or based on the handle. Is the door something you got to pull to open or push to open? And you can kind of see most doors depending upon the handle. If it's like one of those long bars in the middle and you kind of push, it's obviously you got to push, right? Hopefully it's obvious. But if it's got like a U-shaped handle on the door where you can grab, it's hopefully obvious it's going to pull. And but some people get really, design stuff on their doors, and then you're looking at the door like, how do I open it? And hopefully there's a sign. If you can't really tell, if it's not obvious, hopefully there's a sign that says pull or push. Deciding that the door opens when pushed from the inside in case of emergency is a design decision and is probably the most critical consideration. So that is something to take in consideration. If it's an emergency, you don't want to have to stand at the door, figure out how to open it. Let's see. Design is an act of listening, empathizing, and acting on that information. So hearing our customers and their needs is a way that we can best ensure that our designs are solving the right problems. The solutions we're creating are addressing the needs for real people. The best way for anyone in the design discipline is to create a product or service that actually addresses a person's need, is by listening and understand the problems in the first place. Let's see. Design is storytelling. A good story has a distinct beginning, middle, and end. It's mapped out, and it gives the user a good experience, which is considered as UX or user experience. How someone moves through a physical space is similar to this. They are presented with visual information, and from that, they are choosing how to proceed. Your customer may have an adverse experience and leave if they get confused, such as closing your app or leaving your website. People using digital products in unexpected ways so it's important to get to best guide them in the ways that they built them to be used. So, be sure, don't make assumptions. I know I'm guilty of this in so many areas. I make assumptions. And I try hard to stop making assumptions and be more descriptive. That's something I definitely need to work on, but don't assume people know how to interact with your product. Excuse me. Writing is a core part of the design process that should be taken into consideration. Spelling mistakes, you don't want those typos like you've seen me do several times in this past week. Excuse me. You may be asking why being told that his design is about writing and storytelling talks about considering the impact of a sentence with spelling mistakes. And something like healthcare. Yeah, you don't want to see that. Or your bank. There are some websites and sources that you need it to be 100% accurate. Like my typos and emails and so on and so forth. But if it's a healthcare or a bank, yeah, it's a bigger deal. Another consideration to keep in mind is that new design technologies and trends are always appearing. So understanding and leveraging a fundamental like storytelling will better prepare for new types of design. So design is function and then form. It's just not making it pretty, but there are some. It's not just making stuff pretty. That is often a consequence of functioning well and offering a great experience. So Steve Jobs. Most people make the mistake of thinking of design. Hold on. Okay, Steve Jobs said that most people make the mistake of thinking design is what it looks like, and but the designers are handed this box and told make it look good. That's not what we think design is. It's not just what it looks like and feels, it's how it works. So let's see. Design is aesthetics. So, okay, it's function and aesthetics, but there's a lot of positive consequences of solving a problem, telling the story, and making something that functions well. If it often turns out that being simple and easy to use, there's always still an opportunity where to visually polish it further. There are the extra steps it takes to win over your competition and to grow your product. There is a phenomenon called the aesthetic usability effect, which is that the perception is that if it's prettier, it's going to be better. And I thought this was an interesting reference, talking about how it's like the JFK versus Richard Nixon election, because JFK was more attractive than Richard Nixon. That helped with his sense of authority and the appeal that he had. So every design begins with the same essential elements: points, lines, and shapes. Similarly, even the most complex designs can be reduced to those vital pieces. Let's see. So communications design. You can create much of our designed world by using a small set of elemental shapes to build things of high complexity. Although the use of primary shapes and colors are famously promoted at the Bauhaus school as fundamentals to design, these forms have been part of the language of design for hundreds of years. So it tells an interesting story about the New York subway map. I'm not going to get into that. Design is asking questions. As a designer, you must ask why. Maybe not as much as an inquisitive 4-year-old, but close. Who are we designing for? What are the problems that they face? How can we go about solving those problems? Why might our solution not work? What can we do about it? Why was a decision made by our company or team? Let's see. Design is practicing. Being a designer entails spending time building your experience level. You're not going to be great on day one. That's okay. It's important to keep doing it. You will get better. Ira Glass talks about the creative gap between knowing something looks good but not being able to create it. And this is a value step in your journey to become a great designer. Understanding what works, what looks good to you, and building towards it. So talks about Iris Glass for beginners. Let's see. So we get into it because we have good taste, but it's like there's a gap. That for the first couple years that you're making stuff and what you're making isn't so good. But it's not okay. It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has potential, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer. So your taste is good enough so that you can tell what you're making is kind of disappointing to you. So your taste is there, your skills aren't. A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit and they think I would just say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste. They could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted to be. They knew it fell short and it didn't have any special thing that they wanted to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. So if you go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. So here's some other reading material. It's not, I think this is a video, but it's not required to watch. But if it's, if you're interested in learning more about design, like I said, I know some of you are more design inclined, check it out. So for the summary, as you have realized by now, design is not easy to define. It's the culmination of a number of disciplines that come together to create something for people to use. Much like art, many things could be considered design to the point where it's somewhat subjective, while something could be considered art when it is challenging for a viewer to comprehend, a design would be regarded as unsuccessful. Everyone is a designer, and you can make high impact design decisions without realizing you're a designer. When you understand the impact of decisions not traditionally considered to be design, it's easy to see why. Okay, so that's that portion of that assignment. And so what is graphic design? Now we're going to go into design thinking and ethics. So before you start designing, it's tempting to create a new file and get started making something immediately, but there's some things to consider. The reality as a designer is that you're moving pixels around on your screen is only a small part of your job. You got building buttons, type systems, interfaces, and such. But that work is not inclusive of all the work a designer does. Being a designer is identifying the problems, asking the right questions, and making the best solution or choice for your clients. So let's say I'm creating an application for mobile phones. To get started, I ask the team, who's the audience? Is my audience the entire globe? Then I will need to think about my app in different languages. And that's how it affects the space I leave the text for my buttons and other interface. Some design is problem solving. You'll need to tailor your solution to your audience and their specific problems. Your ability to communicate with your audience come from listening to them and understanding their situation. Let's see. I don't know for sure, but I can presume that there are a lot of ways for individuals to find out the weather already, with built-in applications existing on the most mobile platforms. So along with the ability to step outside the home in most circumstances, I think building a weather app might be a solved problem. Let's see. How about an application to let trans-identified individuals find a safe place to use the restroom? This is a real problem. So this is why ethics are important for designers. Creating products and services that solve real problems, finding a restroom or seeing what the weather is, can help people live better lives, and a superpower that is accessible with design. And go ahead and highlight that. And should not be taken lightly. Considering how you are able to help or hurt people when designing is crucial and worth investigating. So there's the designer's code of ethics. We must try to remember to highlight this, and I'm failing miserably. We must judge the value of our design work by the impact it has on the world, good or bad. And it's up to you to be aware of that impact. Again, there's another further reading if you want to read it, not required. If you want to design a voice-activated product like a personal assistant, you need to make sure customers can control their data and understand how it's being used. If they're coming to your product to create the shopping list, then their shopping list data shouldn't be sold to other companies. Situation like this, you have a voice and can use it to do good. You can help them understand where their data goes. There's not a Hippocratic oath for designers for ethical standards, but you should know where your own boundaries lie. Design is a people-focused job. You'll hear a lot about empathy, and for a good reason. Empathy is just the ability to understand the world through other people's eyes. Empathy is an important part of inclusivity as well. Design has the power to inform, and the messages we communicate with our products imply much more than what we've expected. So Alice Lee, a freelance designer in San Francisco, illustrated WordPress's brand and wrote about how important it is to bake this consideration into your process from the very beginning. Let's see, unconscious bias. Bias is the preference or prejudice for or against someone or something. So our brains look for patterns and past events to inform decisions without involving the conscious part of the mind. This is helpful to reduce, our cognitive load on our everyday experiences. But the previous experiences that our perception is being filtered through can include cultural stereotypes. So with unconscious bias, is having these stereotypes influence how our minds are processing new information. If we believe in these stereotypes or not, many exposed cultural stereotypes can lead to our brains using them to understand new experiences. It's nearly impossible to get rid of all your unconscious bias. but you can work to reduce them. Unconscious bias is molded by what we observe around us, proactively working to transform those concepts. It's crucial for designers to understand the bias, but to combat their own biases as they create and tap into the biases of their customers. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video here. All I did was read these lessons and did my own ad-libbing. Um, and if yeah, and then I'm going to do a different video for just the assignment because I don't know how many people just want to have a video of me reading stuff to them.